So think back to the last time you learned something. Was there a concept or subject that just clicked for you? You understood it clearly and it made sense. Now think about a time at school when you couldn't understand the concept or subject, no matter how hard you tried. Well, in today's video, I'm going to dive into some learning theory to help you to understand how we process information and how different ways of teaching and learning can impact how quickly and effectively you learn. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Alex. I'm a surgeon and the founder of a few edtech companies, and on this channel, we focus on learning and human performance to help you live healthier, wealthier, happier, and more productive lives. Now, I'm going to break this video down into what cognitive learning theory is, and then I'm going to look at 4 different cognitive learning strategies that you can use to help you to learn things more effectively and to teach others more effectively too. So let's hop into things, starting with what cognitive learning theory actually is. So cognitive learning theory explains how we process information when we learn. When we think back to our school days, many of us will remember a teacher who stood at the top of the classroom lecturing us on a subject. Almost every teacher used this method for almost every single subject. And in the vast majority of cases, a student's success was measured by how much they could remember on exam day. This was true for me in medical school, where I'd just sit passively in a huge lecture hall with 300 other bored students trying to figure out what I needed to remember and how to learn. This type of teaching and learning, where the learner is mostly passive, sitting down and listening, while the active participant, the teacher, imparts their knowledge, is linked to something called the behaviorist learning theory. Now, this focuses on the idea that all behaviors are learned through interaction with the environment. This theory looks at how we, as learners, respond to an external stimulus and goes all the way back to Pavlov's original doggo-based experiment where he conditioned a dog to learn through association with rewards and punishment. Now, while the idea of getting treats is fun, cognitive learning theory, on the other hand, suggests that the learner is a much more active participant in the learning process than simply responding to a stimuli or a treat. They come to the table with their own skills, knowledge, memories, and relevant information they've learned in the past. When learning something new, individuals process and construct their own understanding of a topic based on their past experiences and their own knowledge. As you remember from my other videos on how to learn, this was one of the key principles of interleaving and understanding concepts rather than simply memorizing facts. Now, to fully understand this theory, let's look at 4 strategies which shape the concept of cognitive learning. I'll also show how these theories or learning strategies can be implemented into any learning environment, whether for your own learning and studying or if you're teaching others. So let's kick things off with the learner-centered approach. Learning is cumulative and relative to each individual. When we're learning, we start with a baseline of knowledge and go from there. Jean Piaget, a Swiss psychologist and pioneer of cognitive learning theory, favored this learner-centered approach to teaching. He suggested that accommodation, assimilation, and equilibration are all crucial to learning. Accommodation is how we modify what we already know to take new information into account. Assimilation is how the new knowledge is arranged in our heads alongside what we already know. And equilibration is the balance between what we already know and what we're currently mastering. For Piaget, learning is the process of relating new information to what we already know. Each new point or concept that's introduced should build on the knowledge already acquired, and learning material should be divided into appropriate stages and taught in a logical order. If you're learning a new concept, such as from a lecture, online course, or a new skill, it's important that you break up concepts with defined learning outcomes and structure learning into an order that gradually builds from your baseline of existing knowledge. In addition, it's important to take stock of what you already know and actively try to understand new information in relation to your own existing ideas. Reading around new topics is key here, and if you're teaching others, creating a safe environment where learners can ask questions that are personalized to their own baseline knowledge will aid understanding. So the next strategy is Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is named after educational psychologist Benjamin Bloom and describes 6 different levels of cognitive learning in the form of a hierarchy. At its most basic level, the taxonomy describes the essential abilities needed to recall information that's been taught, while at the highest level, it describes a learner's ability to take what has been taught, analyze it, and then use it to create and evaluate things. So what are the 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy? Well, from bottom to top, the hierarchies are remembering, which is knowing the facts, being able to recall information, and the ability to describe what's been learned. Understanding is the ability to interpret the information that's been learned in order to present, summarize, or paraphrase it. Applying is then taking what's been learned and using it to solve a related problem or complete a task. Analyzing is then a deeper level of understanding, organizing, comparing, and deconstructing the relationship between different aspects of the material. Evaluating is then the ability to judge the information and critique it to choose a specific course of action. And finally, creating is generating new ideas or ways of looking at things and inventing, constructing, producing, or designing new ideas or concepts. Now, when learning or teaching, you should consider the depth of cognitive learning you need to achieve from a given subject or course. For example, if you're learning basic steps in a new skill or entry-level topics for an exam or test, it's likely that remembering, understanding, and applying the information provided is sufficient to pass that exam, which focuses really on recalling the facts. However, if you're training to be a doctor or nurse and need to learn about concepts like leadership and making critical team-based decisions, the level of cognitive learning needed must be deeper. Important clinical decisions will require analysis, evaluative, and creative skills that come later on in the taxonomy. When you're learning or teaching, Bloom's taxonomy is a helpful resource for thinking about how well you actually know a subject or a topic. In previous videos in the learning series, I've talked about the power of teaching others to help you to learn concepts more deeply, and how creating teaching materials or questions, whether for your own personal use or for teaching others, will help you to logically order your understanding of a topic and put the concepts into your own words, which helps you to truly understand what you've learned. The next strategy is learning through discovery and spiral learning. Active learner involvement is a core feature of cognitive learning. Jerome Bruner, a psychologist who studied cognitive learning in children, suggested that instead of simply feeding students information, we should allow them to discover it for themselves. Bruner built on Piaget's work, and he believed that ensuring learners had a conceptual understanding of the topic was way more important than the actual acquisition of knowledge. Interaction is a core component here, and part of what Bruner called the spiral process. Previously learned material is frequently reviewed, even as new material is being introduced. Spiral learning is a teaching method based on the premise that the student learns more about a subject each time the topic is reviewed or encountered. The idea is that each time a student encounters the topic, the student expands their knowledge or improves their skill level. This ensures that a topic is fully understood. In a learning environment, Bruner's interpretation of cognitive learning theory can be put into place by giving learners opportunities to complete meaningful tasks to solidify learning. For example, role-playing communication scenarios or spoken language sessions if you're learning a new language, or simply by asking learners to solve real-world challenges with the onus on the learner to work things out for themselves. For learners, this is really about using active recall to go over existing topics and using spacing to interleave between study sessions such that you're returning to concepts to help consolidate your understanding. The final strategy is about creating meaningful learning experiences. David Ausubel, an American psychologist and advocate of cognitive learning, believed that for learning to be effective and permanent, it had to be meaningful. He made a clear distinction between meaningful learning and rote learning, where in rote learning, the material is learned as a series of facts in isolation, or simply learned off by heart, and no deliberate attempt is made to demonstrate its value or relevance to the learner. He believed that relatable material, which fitted in closely with what the learner already knew, was meaningful and therefore effective. Utilization of meaningful learning may trigger further learning, as the relation of a concept to a real-world situation may be encouraging to the learner. It may encourage the learner to understand the information presented and will assist with active learning techniques to aid that understanding. When teachers make a marked effort to show why a lesson is meaningful for the learner, there's a significantly higher chance of it becoming anchored in the brain alongside what's already known. Ausubel suggested that advanced organizers are an effective way of doing this. This basically means that before diving into a complex topic, teachers and learners should cover some introductory material or offer some background to the topic. When learners have the relevant background knowledge, it's easier for them to slot in new information. So for example, for you as a learner or a teacher, this might mean that new information should be sequenced carefully so this knowledge builds on what the learner already fully understands. New material should be prefaced with an introductory or background information, and it's really important for that to happen at the beginning of a lesson. And teachers should emphasize how each element of the session is meaningful to the job or task the learner is being prepared for. If you think about this, it's pretty obvious, but if it's meaningful to you, you're more likely to learn it. Now, when designing the content for your next learning session or teaching program, bear in mind that individuals relate to materials in different ways. You can give each participant the best shot at success by summarizing together all of these learning theories. Firstly, sequence your course content carefully. Then review the material you've already covered regularly, and allow learners the opportunity to play an active part in their own learning. And finally, emphasize why the material is meaningful and how it relates back to success. As a learner, you can look at your lecture notes or course materials and think whether these 4 things are true, or whether you need to further organize things and make them relevant yourself. You can also use tools like Bloom's taxonomy to assess your own understanding of a topic and see if you truly get it. Now, if you enjoyed this video, we've added in some links to other videos in the learning series you might find useful. And if you have any suggestions for future topics you'd like to see covered, do let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing. If you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, please do so, and I'll catch you again in the next video.